when you get up in the morning, please say, I love me. Please say, I honor me. Because self-love is self-care.
We all have bad things happen. We all experience adversity, but we can cultivate an inner sense of balance and equilibrium.
There are ways that we can really comfort ourselves with just everyday moments.
When we cultivate our well-being, it's like we're gathering up the wellness that exists inside of us from our lived experience, and that brings to us healing.
This is where I take that turned around thought and I place it in the midst of a mantra, my own personal mantra, and I speak it. Sometimes I even sing it.
Because it's not always what do I have to get through, it's what feeling do I want to get through this with.
When we take care of ourselves, we are more productive, more effective, more empathetic, better in every way.
Together, we can carry the weight of our lives. This is where the light enters. This is where we heal.
Welcome to the second of our 2023 micro chat series, where you become part of our experience. Our 25-minute interview will include an opportunity for you, our community, to pose questions to our next person who's going to be speaking. You can open your chat box and submit your questions throughout our show, and you'll be part of our series. So, first of all, let me say that we are thrilled to be with you again. And today we're speaking with an absolutely remarkable woman who has touched unimaginable grief and trauma and has fought to start life once again. She's a well known media consultant who's produced content for Good Morning America, the Oprah Winfrey Show, CBS News, and for many other television shows that you've watched through the years. And in 2022, her best selling book, The Other Side of Yet, told the story of her journey of healing and resilience after the murder of her 7-year-old daughter. She shares her story of loss and resilience with the hope that others can find the strength within themselves to come out the other side of the crossroads and begin anew and heal. It is my absolute pleasure, my honor to introduce this author, a consultant, and you'll see quickly why she's a masterful inspirational speaker. Welcome, Michelle Hord. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Boy, that's quite a, I feel like my dad may have paid you for that hype intro there. Thank you so much.
I think you've earned every word of it. Um, I wanted to start with Um, I guess just jumping right in. You have experienced the most unthinkable tragedy of any mother, their worst nightmare. And your journey speaks about adversity, tragedy, and the power of resilience. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about how you pulled yourself through the pain and what strategies you've used to endure and thrive.
Yeah, I'm going to start back just a little bit because I think it's relevant. So you mentioned that I've worked as a television producer. My first job was in America's Most Wanted. And one of my biggest assignments there was handling missing children cases. So you may recall the show was started by John Walsh, who lost a child to kidnapping. And so in my early 20s, I was flying around the country to families who were experiencing their worst moments of their lives. I was in the house on the other side of police tape, trying to be both producer and social worker and advisor as they saw producers from America's Most Wanted. And throughout my career, one of the things that always inspired me, if it was a natural disaster or a school shooting or a horrific situation like a kidnapping, was that there were always people that would come out in the community that would do anything, complete strangers, and that the families who were experiencing these just unimaginable traumas found a way to keep going. And so flashing forward to, 20 plus years later, I'm a mother. I have a 7-year-old daughter who's the light of my life. And after a very tumultuous divorce, my husband, after signing the papers, killed our daughter. And it is this sort of story, ironically, that he and I, had we seen it on television years before, would have said, oh my God, I can't imagine. It's the sort of thing that people in my own neighborhood would say, this doesn't happen here. And then I was on the other side of the police tape. So a lot of my work now is about how do you get through those unexpected challenges, changes, heartbreak. And there are some real solid tools, I think, that lead and connect with resiliency that are important. And quickly, I know we'll dive in a little deeper, but top of mind for me is starting with just survival, just somehow admitting that something has happened, the ship has wrecked, and somehow you're still here. That's very difficult to hear sometimes. But what does it take in this moment? What does self care look like? What do you need in this moment? And to take things moment by moment when something traumatic happens unexpectedly.
And I listened to your story, and the concept of being in the moment
Mm.
has such power. And I'm wondering what that meant specifically to you.
I think, and we all cope differently. And, one of the things I learned through a wonderful trauma counselor that I still work with today is that there is no playbook. We all um, operate in the world differently, we all grieve differently. But for me, and in part, it may be because of my background as a journalist, everything just slowed down. And it was almost like I was watching what was happening, trying to process, trying to understand logistically what needed to be done, phone calls I needed to make. Um, and, you talk about a worst nightmare. This was worse than my worst nightmare. the losing a child, absolutely worst nightmare. Under these circumstances, in this ultimate betrayal, was not in my frame of reference. It just was beyond anything I could have imagined. So I think that my body and my connection to a spiritual part of me said, this will never make sense. Perhaps I'm not even supposed to be here anymore. What am I going to do now? How do I honor Gabrielle now in this moment? And that's a question I asked myself over and over again. How do I honor her in this moment? And that guided a lot of my early choices.
I want to go back to that honoring, and that's an important element of what we need to talk about. I know we have a poll for everyone that's out there, and I'd love for everyone to just vote. The question is, how do you deal with tragic losses in your life? Do you typically withdraw? Do you become angry? Do you reach out and get help? Or all of the above? And it may be that it's none of these, but if you wouldn't mind, please just vote, and we'll go through some of the results in a minute. And Michelle, you talked about just now about the power of spirituality for you. That was a strong support.
Yes. And, I think for me, my faith is like an insurance policy um, that I've had to cash in, frankly, before I lost my daughter. And so, I think one of the most important things about building resilience muscles is being clear about what works for you. I lost my mother and grandmother within 3 months of each other when I was 24. My mother died suddenly of a cerebral aneurysm. And so while the loss of my daughter, losing a child to violence and everything that comes with that is incredibly different, it was also another sudden loss. And so I knew that some of the tools, some of the learning that I had at 24 would inform some of the choices that I made, half my life later when I lost Gabrielle. And my faith was a fundamental part of that.
And it's so wonderful that you have, as you said, such a strong skill that you found within your life. We have, I'm curious, do we have any results from the poll? Maybe we can show those. And that would mean that I would need to put on my glasses.
You and me both.
Yes. I don't know if everybody saw them quite that quickly. I know I didn't. We'll come back to that. Um, Michelle, I know there was a woman who wanted to speak with you. She was very uncomfortable. She didn't want to be on camera. And she asked if she could record a question to you. She felt more comfortable doing it that way. And I was hoping that we could share it with you and you could respond.
Okay.
Michelle, my daughter recently passed after a long battle with cancer. How do I find the will to move forward with my life? Everything around me reminds me of her.
I can just feel the pain in her voice. So I'll start by saying, I'm not going to pretend to know what your walk is like. We each, even in losing a child, it's a different walk. But when you talk about everything reminding you of her, only you can decide what your grieving process looks like. For some people, that's pictures everywhere, that's talking about someone all the time. For other people, it's, I can't go there. I can't talk about her. I don't want to see pictures. I don't want reminders right now. And there's no right or wrong. So, I think to give yourself the agency to do what you need to do in the moment is incredibly important. I think another thing that was incredibly helpful to me was finding ways to help others, which may sound a little counterintuitive when you feel like you're being scraped off the floor, quite honestly. But I started doing things around Gabrielle's birthday, giving donations to organizations that had meant a lot to her as a child. Um, it doesn't have to be anything that's, creating a nonprofit, but there is something about finding a way of getting outside of yourself. If that's doing an online fundraiser, perhaps for one of the cancer research foundations that's connected with your daughter's cancer. I think those are some of the ways, and, pull in your community. And you may be surprised. Sometimes the people that are there for us aren't the people that are closest to us, they're almost too close. So be open to people who say, "What can I do?" And be honest with them in that moment, and give yourself permission to change. In the moment, it may be, "I want you to come over and for us to cook dinner." And it's okay if an hour later you text and say, "Honestly, I just need to be by myself right now." So I think to just really lean into that wise part of yourself and try to mother yourself the way I'm sure you mothered your beautiful daughter.
Wow, what a beautiful response. And it speaks to the importance of being in the now, and also the whole concept of trying to find some kind of meaning from this tragedy, which many people, including David Kessler, believe is the last step, that it's necessary. And I know that you've written this amazing book, and I have two questions for you. Number one, why the title, The Other Side of Yet? And why write it now?
Well, thank you so much. I've always written. I grew up as a television producer. I always wanted to write a book. You can imagine this is not a book that anyone would have wanted to write, right? So part of it began as a healing for me. Journaling. Journaling is something that I've done throughout my life. And in these moments of crisis, talking to myself, talking to God, talking to my daughter were early ways for me to really cope. And as I shared some of those things with close family and friends, they were inspired. And they said, "You know what? Wow, this helped me." And so it made me think about what it would mean to memorialize my journey and hopefully help other people. The title has two meanings. One is what it's like to be on the other side of an unimaginable situation. I went from being on one side of police tape as a producer to the other side of police tape as a mother, and wanting to look for that next other side, right? Where there will be healing and hope. The initial thought was as we were driving away from the crime scene, literally on June 6th, 2017, when this happened, I remembered a verse in the book of Job, and I looked it up. And it's, "Though he slay me, yet do I trust him." And initially, it felt like a declarative statement that was a bit of a question mark in lowercase. I wanted to believe it. And over time, it became a battle cry. And I truly believe that whatever I was left on this earth to do must be important enough that I'm still here. And so I had to fight for it. And so, how do you get to the other side of your yet? Whether that's, "We just bought a house and I lost my job yet," or "I never imagined getting a divorce yet," or "My son just dropped out of college yet." How do we get to the other side of that yet? Because that is where we can pivot and imagine something else for our lives.
It's listening to your words. I mean, I could just feel inside myself, and I'm sure that some of the audience out there are feeling the same kind of feeling. I mean, on one hand, I feel like this heaviness of knowing what's happened. But on the other hand, I listen to you and I hear such hope. I hear such um, just strength and power and love. And you went to the thing that I use often too, which is writing. And I'm curious for you, what does writing do for you?
Writing is a way for me to talk to myself. It can be stream of consciousness. It's hard when you're a writer to just sort of blurt out stream of consciousness. There's a great book called The Artist's Way that some folks may be familiar with, and it talks about morning pages, which means literally you get up, you roll over, and you start writing. And that's important, having that process, whether it's in the morning or at night, where you can just get stuff out of your brain and your body. It doesn't have to go anywhere. You don't even have to ever read it again. But sometimes that keeps those thoughts from creeping up and becoming bigger than they should be. So, writing for me has served a lot of purposes. Writing poems to honor my daughter, writing articles to try to help others who are going through incredible loss. And in those early weeks and months, writing to Gabrielle, writing to God, and trying to pull some of that heaviness out of my body.
There's a quote that resonates with me, and I'm interested in your take, and I wanted to read it to you. It's from Brene Brown, and it says, "Only when we're brave enough to explore the darkness will we discover the infinite power of light." And I wondered what that meant to you.
Well, it really resonates with me. In fact, the subtitle of my book is Finding Light in the Midst of Darkness. And that's because over time I felt as if I had these holes in my body and in my heart. And somehow God, the universe, nature was using that to shine light through for other people. Perhaps not in the moment light I could see or feel, but that pinprick of hope, of continuing to look for things to be grateful for, of finding even small little moments of that was a great meal, or that was a ridiculous but funny half-hour sitcom. Just those little hour by hour moments where you can see pinpricks of light are so important to hold on to.
And we talked a little bit before the show, and I can see why you're drawn to coaching people in your life right now, because your words are so inspiring and they have such meaning and such gifts. And I'd love to go to the next poll if we could, because I know that one item in this poll is something that means a lot to you. It the question is, how do you preserve the memory of a loved one? Is it a special item that you keep that means a lot to you? Is it pictures? Is it videos? Is it maintaining those traditions that perhaps you shared with that person? Or is it talking about them? So we'd love to hear from you. And I'm curious, Michelle, which or all of those, which has helped you preserve and perhaps heal a little?
They all resonate to some extent. I will say, and I talk about in the book, that my daughter had a doll, a rag doll that she had from, she didn't remember a time when she didn't have it. And because I am the Think Through Plan F television producer, I had a couple of different ones in case I had, God forbid, we ever left one in the airport or I needed to wash one. And, she always had to have one with her. So during our divorce proceedings, Gabrielle would go between her father's house and a rental house that I had, and the doll's named Barbara. There was a Barbara at both houses. And given the fact that this crime happened in our family home, I lost a lot of her things. But I did have one of her Barbara dolls. And so that doll is sitting right next to me. I'm looking at it now, next to my screen. I keep it in my purse with me. I think to call it a good luck charm somewhat diminishes it. It was special to her, and so it's special to me. Um, But, I don't think that there is any one answer. It's not a lucky charm. It reminds me of her. It was one of the things that was closest to her. And so, for those reasons, this little doll is something that I've carried with me. And in fact, I was blessed to find love again and remarried about 16 months ago. And on the front row, in the seating for the service, there was Barbara.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Um, I don't know if we have any results. Um, it looks like 33% said a special item, and uh, 26, I can't see.
It's a big number.
66. Talk about them. How interesting. Because that's what you're doing today. And I remember someone telling me after my mother had died, they said, as long as you talk about that person, they will never die because they are in you and they continue to be spoken of. And I'm wondering if you resonate with that thought as well.
Absolutely. And, one of the things over time, initially when someone passes away for a series of weeks or months, people pay attention and are close, and then they go on with their lives, which, by the way, they have the right to do. But one of the things 6 years later, that means so much to me is if a friend sends a picture of Gabrielle. Sometimes it's another fellow mom sending a picture of Gabrielle they found in their phone. And initially people were hesitant. If I was having a good day, they were afraid of somehow upsetting me. And what I had to tell people is there is nothing you could do more to honor Gabrielle and her memory than to remember her. And so, when people send me pictures of her, when their daughters share stories of her, we have several projects through our nonprofit. One is an amazing playground in front of her school, and I have friends who will take pictures of their kids on that playground. So, yes, it makes a lot of sense to me that that would be the primary way that people keep those loved ones and those memories alive.
And that's a perfect segue because the next thing I was going to ask you was to talk about your foundation and to tell everybody a little bit about it.
Yes, thank you so much. So, our foundation is called Gabrielle's Wings. It is a nonprofit, and it started from a mother's heart. I wanted to give my daughter all the things that I could, cultural, educational, to ensure that she would have every advantage in life. Unfortunately, that was obviously cut short. So, what Gabrielle's Wings does is focuses on Black and Brown children in traditionally underserved communities and standing in that gap for those children, because a lot of children who look like my daughter do not have the ability to have private swim lessons or to go to a STEM camp or to have some of the social emotional learning tools that we're learning are so critically important to children, or to have laptops and Wi-Fi. So we have work on 3 continents that's really focused on social emotional learning, and creating the spaces and places that will give children safe havens to grow and to learn and to reach their potential.
It's beautiful. Thank you, thank you. I I would like to just kind of conclude with um, what you would like everyone that's listening today to either take from your book or take from what we've talked about today.
I think the most important thing is it's easy to hear a story like mine and say, oh my gosh, I could never deal with that. I could never survive that. You are so much stronger than you think. This was not survivable for me until it had to be. And so I would encourage people that the resiliency tools that your work talks about, that we talk about in my book, apply to all sorts of life situations. I think we're all either coming out of, in the middle of, or going into change, right? And unexpected change, whether it's a choice we've made or whether it's change that's imposed upon us, can bring about the need to be resilient. And so these tools are applicable to everyone, and you have what you need.
Beautiful. And I want to also remind everyone out there that on September 8th, we'll be doing our annual resiliency conference. It's probably be a 5.5 hour presentation where over 50 different presenters will be donating their time and talent. And Michelle is one of those. And they will be speaking about resiliency. And I think it will give you all an opportunity to hear Michelle again and to hear many other people talk about resiliency. And we're going to put up the registration page for you. I also want to say that we've had 2 amazing micro chats already. We have 2 more to go, and you're going to see those graphics in a few minutes. We're going to be speaking with Yuri Razzo on August 24th, who's a researcher from Australia, who's just unbelievable as it relates to understanding resiliency and how to move through it. And the very popular Tal Ben Shahar on August 29th, who is the king of happiness. And you'll learn why. And I want to thank you, Michelle. I am blown away by you, and I hope that everybody will look for your book. Will join us on the 8th, and I thank you for sharing your time, your story, and your friendship.
Oh, thank you so much. And I look forward to getting a chance to work with you and hear so many of the other amazing speakers that you've lined up on the 8th. I'm sure there's something I'll learn too.
And please know that we will be posting this on our website on resiliencyandhappiness.com. And hopefully, we're going to be putting together some of the amazing clips that you heard so that we can share those on social media as well. So, thank you so much. Thank you
Thank
to
you.
our producer, Shelley Plum, and the studios for a beautiful, beautiful production.